Speaking of that, we've got Karen Zander in here this morning. She is with us.
Oh, what a setup.
Thank you. I saw a little opening there. We were talking about football
so much.
on the weekend.
Can we talk about Colorado?
Finding a little opening
Let's talk about Colorado.
Karen, first, thank you for being here.
You're welcome. Thanks for inviting me.
And tell me first, what is the St. Augustine Business Coalition? How long have you guys existed? I imagine you didn't just put this together for this ordinance.
No, so the St. Augustine Business Coalition, I founded it with a group of about 12, probably, business leaders in 2019. And we formed because we felt like the city really didn't have one group, one place to go when they wanted input from the business community. So the chamber is out there, but the chamber doesn't really have a beat on how businesses downtown think, and they just weren't really doing too well with that. So we said, all right, we have to have some place to help the city talk to the business community, some group. And then also we felt like we needed to advocate for the downtown businesses' business interests.
Yeah.
So we wanted to be an advocacy group, but we wanted to be a resource for the city. So again, we're about 12, now we're up to maybe closer to 15 business owners who have hotels, restaurants, event venues, some bars, just the wide variety. Art galleries are represented.
So a little bit of everything.
Yeah, but we formed in
the flavor of downtown.
Yeah, but we formed in 2019, and the city knows us. We've had meetings where we featured people in the city, John Regan or David Burcham or one of the commissioners. We've liaised with them. They're aware of us.
Yeah. Okay, good. How do you guys feel about this ordinance right now? What is the feeling among the business coalition right now?
Well, the St. Augustine Business Coalition hired an attorney to represent us, and he spoke, James Whitehouse. He spoke at the last meeting. So we felt like as a business, it's often hard to push back against the city because a lot of these business owners have to go before the city for some sort of approval, permit. And they felt like if they individually, personally, push back too hard or hired an attorney, the city would single them out. Now, I'm not saying that would happen, but that's just the feeling. Yeah, sure. They didn't want to do that. So the St. Augustine Business Coalition said, all right, we'll take this on for the business community. I would tell you that overall, the St. Augustine Business Coalition, I think, is in line with most business owners downtown, which is if there's an issue, which we aren't sure there is, but if there's an issue with alcohol service between 12 and 2, talk to us. We want to work with you.
Yeah.
We're here. We're responsible. But I think overall, we also feel that, again, if there's issues, enforce what you have on your books already.
Yeah.
Right?
Can you highlight some of the issues that you guys are most concerned about with this ordinance?
Well, it's difficult to operate in particularly in the downtown area. There's a lot of board approvals and HARB approvals and permits that you need as a business owner. And so it's tough to keep track of it. It's a lot to keep track of. It takes a lot of time. It takes money, it takes energy. And so adding one more permit, it might seem like a really small thing to an outsider, but these businesses are keeping track of so many things that are regulated already in the downtown core. So it scares them that, what if we're trying to do the right thing and we miss something? Or let's say, for example, in the ordinance, they say that you can use cameras for the security that they're going to require. Well, what if your cameras are down?
Right.
And,
you lose internet.
Yeah. Or you just...
We deal with cameras every day. That can happen very frequently.
And then you can't just put things up outside. You have to go before HARB for certain things. So they're worried about that. And anytime you say we can take away your ability to operate, which is to serve alcohol, that's a big piece of their revenue between 12 and 2, right? Most people aren't eating between 12 and 2.
Yeah.
So that's worrisome, definitely.
And Karen, with me as a business person, I live downtown, I work downtown, I have a business downtown. To me, it just feels like an overreach of control. And, as a business person, like you said, we have so many different things to deal with, but it's our investment, and it's almost like someone else is trying to make a decision for our investment. And I think that's the biggest pushback I have is, and there's people out there saying, "Oh, it's a money grab. It's money." No, it has nothing to do with the money. It's about the control. The money's minimum,
couple $100, but no big deal.
But to me, it's about the control. What's the coalition's feeling about giving up some of that control to the city on anything, not alone this ordinance?
I think you're absolutely right. And I think that pretty much sums up the way the business coalition as a whole feels. Again, I think that's reflective of the downtown business community as a whole too. So I'm not for overregulation, and that it feels like overregulation to the business owners, to the business community, because again, if it's noise, you already have the ability to control and enforce, to control noise issues, enforce the noise ordinance. You have that ability, whether you're doing it or not. That's not on the business community, but the city has that ability, right? So it seems like many of the problems are noise related. But
that seemed to be the big complaints that we heard, at least at the meetings I've been to. The folks who are for this ordinance, it's mostly sound complaints.
Yeah.
And that's something we can already deal with.
Yeah. And I sat on the code enforcement, maybe you don't know, I sat on the code enforcement board before I sat on the planning and zoning board. Mm-hmm. And so I felt when I sat on those boards that back then, there definitely is an issue enforcing what's already on the books. I mean, there absolutely is. So why would you add more?
Yeah, and they're not doing that
exactly
as it is. And I just wrote down the 5 things that I sat on that RHI committee, and I talked about this earlier in the week. I mean, the 5 things to me are the sound, lighting, because that's the most dangerous thing, is having the right lighting. Trash cans, ride share, and bathrooms. And those are things that you don't need an ordinance for,
right?
But you need action for.
Well, the city's action.
Yeah,
you need the city's action, not the business communities.
Yeah, that's right. And that's where I feel the focus should be before we even start talking about this ordinance.
Correct. So. Well, and it's frustrating for the business community because the city continues to use justification from the RHI study. They say the business community it doesn't say who was supposed to form the group, but in that RHI, correct me if I'm wrong, because you're the expert on that. In that RHI talking points or takeaway points, they said that there should be a business alliance that forms for the city to liaise with. Is that correct?
Yeah, they requested that.
Yeah. That's one of the points. So the city continues to say, hey, there should be a business alliance. We formed in 2019, not because of the RHI.
And you've honored some of those people. That's what I'm stuck on. It's
Correct.
Like you've had them at your meetings
Correct.
and things. So why do you think, what's your opinion there? Why do you think that they did not consult you and your group?
So I brought a copy of a letter that we sent July 24th, 2023, the St. Augustine Business Coalition. And it's a formal business letter. I wrote it out. So the header is St. Augustine Business Coalition. And we asked that we respectfully requested that you consider involving our group in your discussions to create the proposed nightlife ordinance. So we weren't saying, don't do this. We were saying, can you please involve us? We said, we're here. We want to help. We can give you the perspective of the business community. We said it's going to make for a better ordinance, easier to enforce because the business community will have bought into it. And you'll understand the perspective of the business community as you're writing it.
And they're going to say that that's what the workshop was for. Yeah. So where is that balance?
The workshop wasn't the workshop. The workshop's like the 4 of us sitting around having a conversation. It was like a city commission meeting where you still only got 3 minutes. There was no interaction or no conversation back. So we can't call that a workshop. If you call that a workshop, you really need to look up the word.
And
Cynthia Garris, Cynthia Garris made that point, and she's correct. Yeah. So the letter that we sent in July of 2023, I sent it to every commissioner and to David Burcham, who was at the time the city manager, still is, and to Darlene, who puts it in the record, we got no response. None. Zero. Nothing.
From
Nothing.
Nobody.
Nothing.
Yeah.
So we've been there, we're still here, but I think that it feels to the business community like it's an ordinance written by people who either have never worked in a environment that they're trying to regulate or have never owned it, don't understand it, right?
Yep. And that's one of my frustrations, because I've worked in public and private. And when we were going through what we went through in 2020, we had people that weren't losing their jobs because of the shutdown, making decisions for other people.
Yeah.
And this, in my example, if you would, you have the ordinance, the new ordinance, right?
I do, but I haven't read through it yet.
But all I want you to do is, can you turn to the page, because everything in red is what they've changed.
Pages.
Multiple pages.
And so feel free to show that. Your camera is right there. That one that looks a little different.
Yeah, so everything in red is what they've changed since the last meeting.
Right. This is all new.
All over.
No. So this is what it looks like. The entire ordinance looks like this.
Yeah.
It doesn't change. Every page is all red, right?
Yeah.
So anybody who knows how to alter documents, whenever you make a change, you show that change.
Yeah.
So last time, the entire ordinance was in red.
Wow.
Yeah.
This time, the entire ordinance is in red.
Well, that ain't ready.
So you don't know what's changed unless you literally read word for word in comparison.
one.
Yes.
And I've read like 4 versions. I have not been able to go through this. I've seen some of the
I haven't yet
changes
either.
that have been suggested. Okay, this is one of your concerns. And I've read through that portion of it, but I haven't been able to go through the whole thing again. And
because you won't catch it. You have to literally have the old version sitting here and you go word for word, line for line. That's not how you alter a document, right?
Yeah.
Everybody who works it, that we all know how to alter a document.
Yeah.
So it seems like, doesn't it feel like maybe they're trying to make it difficult to catch the changes?
Why else would you do that? Whether they're trying to do it or not, it is.
Yeah.
That is what it has become.
Why would you do that?
It feels rushed. And, they can say it has nothing to do with the October 1 date. And I'm sorry, if it doesn't, then why are we rushing it? Why are we rushing it so much? And the vote was very close last time. I'm hoping that some of the realization of organizations like yourself, Karen, and because you say you have 12 to 16, but you got quality people on there, like people I work with every day, and people I have great respect for on there. And the commissioners should recognize these aren't the guys that are falling on my street, stepping off.
Right.
We're talking quality people that they've invested in the city and they want the best for the city. They're not trying to push against the city just to be pushing against the city. They want what's best for the city.
Nobody wants increased crime at their business.
No.
Nobody wants the cops coming to their business all the time. It sounds to me like all the business owners that are showing up, they want to work with the city. However, they're just not getting that opportunity. For instance, at the last meeting, the city said, well, we have plenty of time to speak with business owners before the next meeting. We don't. We have 2 weeks. So they also, Karen, where are those meetings? Have we seen, because I have not seen those meetings. To your knowledge, have they had those meetings with the business community?
So I handle all of the communications and everything for the St. Augustine Business Coalition, and they know that. Yeah. They have yet to reach out to the St. Augustine Business Coalition asking for a meeting. I can tell you that we do have 2 meetings set up tomorrow with 2 different commissioners. The challenge is, if the city were to set the meetings, they could do something like a true workshop where all of them could be there. Yeah. And it doesn't violate the Sunshine Law, and we could come and speak. Not like Troy said, not a 3-minute, okay, you're on the clock, but a true workshop. If the city
conversation.
and a learning opportunity. If the city sets that up, they can do that without violating the Sunshine Law. But for me to set something up for the Business Coalition, I can't have more than one commissioner in the room speaking at the same time. Yeah. So I have to set up, if we get them all, I have to set up 5 different meetings. I coordinate with 16 business owners, schedules plus the attorneys.
Jeez.
That is incredibly difficult. So to have the 2 meetings that we have tomorrow with just the 2 commissioners, we're splitting them. So they will not be in the same room at the same time. We're going to have a break. So there's no carryover. We won't violate the sunshine law. But in order to set up those 2 meetings, it took me 3 tries. And I literally spent 3 entire days going back and forth, doing nothing but trying to set up these meetings.
So you owns a business yourself.
I had to take time away from my business. Yes, because we get a date and then like 6 of the people say...
I schedule interviews every day of my life. It's like wrangling butterflies.
Yes,
it's not easy.
We have 16 plus the attorney. And then we have to make sure that the commissioners can make it. And can we have the venue? And it's just... and they only... As soon as they said, well, we want to have meetings with business owners, and I knew that in 2 weeks was going to be the next meeting, I thot, how am I going to do this?
Have you reached out to the mayor, and is she one of the people that you're meeting with?
I have meetings set up. We have meetings set up with 2 of the commissioners tomorrow. I can't do anymore. To get these, it's Sing Out Loud this week. Right? Yeah. So to get these business owners who own venues, they own hotels, they own bars or restaurants, to get them to find a break in their schedule, our meeting tomorrow starts at 12 and will end at 2:30 because we've got to split the meeting. So we've got to essentially do 2 different meetings. So we need a lot of time. That 2.5 hour block is incredibly difficult. I won't have all of us there, but I'll have a lot of us.
So what
there.
if October 1st was taken off the plate? What if that was just erased? And that's not the focus?
I don't think our listeners fully understand the October 1st. I don't know if you saw it in the comments. And October 1st, there's a state legislation that goes into effect October 1st, that any ordinance like this has to be vetted and has to be through a whole process of whether or not it's economically feasible for the business owners. And I talked to the people at the state. They're not real pleased about how this is going down.
No, they are not.
You know, and
because they put this in place.
One of them signed on the bill from the Senate side. I'll let you figure out which one that is.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm telling you, they're not pleased that the management of how this is going down. And we do get funding from the state. I know there's things about ad valorem dollars and all those things. Oh, it's not going to affect this.
Can you really quick talk about?
It's affecting the business, which affects everything else. Everything stems from that. So sorry, Davey.
Can you really quick just talk about what happens after October 1st? I think that's the point. Like, what happens
October
after
1st, if they still want to push forward with this, which I don't think it's first off, it's a ordinance I don't think is necessary if they handle the other stuff properly.
Right.
So that's my first opinion. But after October 1st, and it's such a new legislation, I don't know exactly the details. But
So
the way it was structured is to make sure it doesn't hurt business by cities creating ordinances that could hurt business.
So after October 1st, a municipality is required to do a business impact study. That's the big thing. They're required before they pass an ordinance that could affect the business community. There's a business impact study that's required. And, you know, who knows how difficult that is? That could be a very simple thing, or it could be a difficult thing. But
it's so new. No one really.
But the other way to look at it is, that that's going into effect. So the legislation passed in, I don't know, June or July, but there's a grace period before it kicks in. So the city and the residents and the business community knows that October 1st is when that will be required by the state. If you know that, and you feel like your ordinance is a good one, and you feel like it's not going to be prohibitive, why don't you go ahead and do that study anyway?
Let it be vetted.
Right.
Because
great information.
You have to, and at starting October 1st, if you're confident that it's a good thing, why don't you go ahead and do that?
So why are we rushing it? I don't understand that either.
Yeah.
Well, so again, the St. Augustine Business Coalition has been here. They know of us. It's not like they weren't aware of us. We wrote this letter.
Does it cost a lot of money to do those studies? I mean, I don't know. Maybe.
Well, who knows?
Okay.
Yeah, we really don't know.
That's crazy to me.
It's so new. We don't even know what that looks like yet.
But we've been here, and we're willing to work with the city. We're not saying, we're like Troy said, we're business owners who frankly fund a lot of their campaigns, to be frank.
Yeah.
But we are reasonable, and we want to have a conversation. If there ends up being an ordinance, we feel like we could make it a better ordinance by having input and helping the city to understand how the businesses actually work.
Right. Because they just don't know. They've never owned a bar or restaurant. Many of them, I don't believe, have ever worked in a bar or restaurant. And if they did, it was so long ago that the climate is so different.
So different.
Completely different.
Yeah.
Troy, you were mentioning how this affects hotels. And we've been talking about this from your perspective for a little while. Where are we at with hotels?
Well, with the hotels, I mean, they didn't understand the domain of our license, which covers the entire property. With the new changes, it looks like they tried to go in and manage those things. Me and Mr. Patel met with most of the commissioners. Unfortunately, we couldn't meet with Commissioner Blonder, and hopefully she's feeling better. Mm-hmm. And that's a whole nother thing, because the state basically has a rule that you have to be present. And I don't know what those restrictions are, because she was injured. I hopefully she has a very speedy recovery. So I don't want to throw that out there, but we met with pretty much every commissioner, and talked about it prior to, and the mayor did meet with us. So, I mean, I know a lot of people had trouble, but the mayor did meet with us, but they listen, but it's still, the ordinance just isn't ready.
Yeah.
It's still not defined, because I don't think they fully understand and grasp, because the state's the one who assigns the domain of our license.
And some of the B&Bs also carry liquor licenses,
exactly.
right? So, if not all of them. So it's not only hotels, it's inns.
Well, and the one I have concern about, the people that are staying open, like the taco shop in south of Philly, the way I read it and interpret it, they stay open after 2. They don't serve alcohol after 2, but they stay open and serve. But the way they write it in there, it's almost they have to shut down at 2 because they have a license. And that's not right. I mean, we need those people to have food, and
especially performers and entertainers. They have no option at night except taco hell.
Employees, employees, yeah.
So I mean, and I might be interpreting it wrong, but we haven't had time really to see who's interpreting it in which way. So it just,
and there's not the communication.
Yeah.
There's not the communication to say, hey, this is how I interpret it, and then have a commissioner respond.
And
that's the frustrating.
We're in all these meetings where the business owners can only say, this is how we feel.
Yeah.
And then the commission can't even respond or won't even respond.
They can respond to public comment. That is allowed, but they don't.
They don't.
Yeah. So that's really the frustrating part for the business community and the St. Augustine Business Coalition in particular is we've been here. We're here. We're reasonable people. We truly want to help you.
Yeah.
But you're not engaging with us. You've had every opportunity. So it falls on us to try to create these meetings. That's incredibly difficult with the Sunshine Law. It's incredibly
not what
difficult.
They said they were going to do. It's not what they promised. It's not how they promised to handle this situation.
It just feels like there's opportunity for them to reach out and to engage, and they just don't want to do it.
They don't want to listen to you. I mean, just from my perspective, it feels like they don't want to listen to you. It feels like they don't really care.
Well, they didn't. She didn't even look up from her papers.
Right. No, it feels like the mayor is the salesman on this, and she wants to sell everybody on this, and she doesn't care she doesn't care for the other end.
It doesn't pass the sniff test. I mean,
not even close.
And like, if she gave you a roster of her coalition, these are quality, very good business people.
Yep.
All right. And it doesn't pass the sniff test. If you have this many quality, good people pushing against it, something's wrong.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
a lot of former board members, they're used to reading the ordinances, making decisions, and they're saying, no,
this is mayor who was against this at the last meeting.
Yeah. It's just not passing the sniff test. It's not ready. I mean, and like I said in our interview with Commissioner Springfield, I understand the intent, but we
got to get it right. Yeah.
Man. Don't chop off someone's hand because you got a cough.
Right. Right.
I mean, that's kind of what it feels like is, they're going after a couple of symptoms and not going for a cure.
Is there another way to control alcohol outside of this ordinance?
Well, the state controls alcohol through the state liquor licensing, and they have the ability. The state controls. I think there's some misconception about how that works. So I asked the attorney that we have. The state can control alcohol service no matter what time of day or night. So their regulations, they don't say, oh, what's in place on a state level to regulate, we're just going to ignore it between 12 and 2. That's not what they say. They say, if you want to allow alcohol service between 12 and 2, that's a city decision or a municipality's decision. But our regulations are still in place. So, if, for example, you can have your liquor license pulled if you're serving minors on a daily basis, or if you're serving people if there's evidence that you're serving people past the point of intoxication or to the point of intoxication, the state can pull your liquor license. They don't just ignore it.
The city commission wants to pretend like this is just happening all over the place. They're just serving everybody. They're not checking IDs. They are every establishment serving alcohol understands how this works and understands that they could be out of business if they knowingly sell to minors, if they let people in their establishments who are not of age. So this is something they take very, very seriously, by the way. They don't want to lose their business to the state.
So as you know, because I was on the boards, when I was a board member, I always wanted facts and data, because you pay attention to what people say when they say something in public comment, but you never know if you're getting the full story. There's always interpretation. You just don't know. So I loved to make decisions when I had hard facts, data, because I knew it was a better decision, a more responsible decision, and frankly, it would hold up better in court, right?
Yep.
So I looked at this ordinance the first time and I said, okay, there's some assumptions that are made in the whereas sections that are justifications. Like the city has more law enforcement calls, more costs. So I said, well, I'd love to see that law enforcement call data, because it must be really, there must be a lot of calls on there. So the St. Johns County Sheriff's Office handles all of the dispatch. The city doesn't do their own, and that they've done that for a few years. But prior to the Sheriff's Office handling it, they still have the data from when the city handled it. They're not dataless. So I asked the sheriff and his team to help me, because I didn't want to pull calls like my cat got stuck up in a tree. That's not relevant.
Right.
And I didn't know how to do that. So
is it like a coding process?
Yes.
Okay.
So I would have no idea as a civilian how to do that. So the sheriff's team sat down with me. They read through the ordinance and they tried to be very specific in what they pulled to address, to match the concerns that the ordinance says are there, and the just alcohol service. We tried to be very careful to pull the right types of complaints and call data. So I pulled also the six biggest places downtown that would serve between 12 and 2. It's not comprehensive. I didn't pull every one of them, but I tried to think like, okay, what are the biggest places? Where are the most well-known places that serve between 12 and 2? So you talk about, all the issues that are supposedly here. If you look at 2022, from the data that I got, there's a total of 94 violations in a 24-hour period from the 6 places that I pulled. 94 total calls out of a 24-hour period. So 94 from these 6. But the total number of calls in the downtown area was 17,324 in 2022. So 94 from the 6 biggest.
Is that in the hours that we're talking about?
That's 24 hours.
That's
if I pulled
total hours in 2022.
Yes, because that's just because if we do 12 to 2, it's going to be way less. So 94 total calls in a 24-hour period in the entirety of 2022 for the 6 biggest places I pulled out of 17,324. That's 0.5% of the total calls in Zone 1.
Yeah, and that's interesting. And I've got,
So where are the other 99.5% coming from? You might want to...
I would like to, because we talked about bathrooms and lighting and stuff like that, I'd like to know just how many calls are about people urinating
Yeah.
in public.
Stuck in a toilet or something.
Is that number more? I mean, okay, then that shows that we should do the bathrooms, you know?
And so I didn't know what I was going to find. And look, the sheriff's office is not in the business of putting out bad data, right? Like they don't have a.
No, the numbers are what the numbers are.
The numbers are what they are. Exactly. Yeah. They're not.
And I will say, I met with the St. Augustine Police Department over the weekend, and they did kind of clarify that, yes, dispatch comes from the St. Johns County Sheriff's Office, right? But what can happen is when the police officers get dispatched to a certain call, the complaint may be different than what was actually dispatched. The dispatcher talking to somebody on the phone says, hey, look, we got a drunk guy down here. And by the time the police actually get there, it's not just a drunken disorderly.
But I pulled
something a little bit more than that.
But I pulled by complaint nature and disposition code.
Right.
Two different things.
Right. And I will say they added a lot of other, and we'll probably go through these numbers a little more in depth when we have some time, because unfortunately we're almost out of time this morning on the show, but I may review those tomorrow. But you know, they've supplied me with a lot of data here that we will check out. I think the data, as far as the conversation that we've had today, is a little less important than how this actually affects businesses, why businesses are not being consulted on this, and you know why
it's
this
frustrating.
isn't right. Yeah. The business community is absolutely frustrated. The cops are working hard. I mean, that's obvious no matter where they are.
And I'll tell you, so not to get into the specifics of the data, but it was really frustrating to me when I did pull the data, because I said to the sheriff's team, okay, now how can I tell how much of these calls, like this public intoxication or disorderly conduct or whatever, how can I tell how many of those calls are coming from the homeless or vagrant situation? And they said, you can't. You'd have to literally read every single report in detail. Yeah. So there's no way to know how many of these downtown zone calls are coming from the homeless vagrant problem.
Yeah. And if somebody got a call outside of No Name Bar, just say, for example, how many of those were people who came from the inside, or how many people just wandered up from another establishment? Right.
So the business community is also very worried that if they do call for service because they're trying to be responsible, that'll be a ding against them somehow in this permit.
Yeah, I don't want them to hesitate.
Yeah.
And that's a good point that you brought up, Troy, and that was echoed at the meeting, was this can cause businesses to hesitate to call the police.
It has already
actually increased crime. We heard from somebody who was hesitant to call about somebody who was having an emergency outside of their business because they didn't want to get dinged.
That's terrible.
And this, you know, without proper consideration, without proper vetting, without proper consultation with the bars and restaurants in downtown, that's what we're facing, is an increase in crime, because people don't want to call the cops. People don't want that ding against their businesses because they're afraid that could be the one that shuts their business down.
And I know you're up against the clock, but one other really important point is that, having served on the Planning and Zoning Board, in a lot of the places downtown or downtown near, the alcohol service is controlled by a use by exception that's granted by the Planning and Zoning Board based on very strict criteria. And if the Planning and Zoning Board can deny it, they have the ability to deny use by exception to serve alcohol. They also have the ability to put many conditions on a use by exception to serve alcohol. So those uses by exception may not cover the between 12 and 2 period, but is it really just between 12 and 2? Like, do people not drink at 11, at 10? So the city has the ability to say to the Planning and Zoning Board, you need to stop issuing uses by exception or slow way down. You've got to be much more strict about issuing them. But they issue uses by exception over and over and over and over again. Their own city board controls those alcohol service uses by exception.
Yeah. This is a frustrating situation. It really is.
Karen, thank you for what you did.
Yeah, I mean, we're here. We want to help. We're here.
Yeah. They I wish they would communicate with you guys better. But again, it seems from my perspective that honestly, they don't really care to. They don't really care to. Some of the commissioners just don't really care to. And I applaud the ones that do.
Yeah.
We've given plenty of credit to the folks who have talked to us. But, I think this is the most public discussion that has happened on this in the last couple of months. It should be up to the city to have these discussions.
Probably the most open forum.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Where people can just talk and try to flesh these things out. Karen, thank you so much for coming by.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Thank
We
you.
appreciate the
You're
time.
welcome.
We
Thanks for
appreciate
having
what
me.
you all are doing with the Business Coalition.